Hello everyone and welcome to the Waffle Flower channel. It's Shannon here, and today I'm going to be using this layering marble stamp set, these Greenery dies, and I'll also be using these pots dies as well. And in addition to these products, I'll be using 3 other stamp sets just for sentiments. I'm going to pull them out here. I'm using the Bowtiful Stamp Set. On the right in the middle is the potted stamp set, and on the left was the balloon messages stamp set. I'll also be using 4 different shades of green cardstock. You can use your scraps for this. You don't need full sheets. I'm going to be focusing on altering your dies today, to your die cuts I should say, to make some paper art inspired cards. I'm going to first start with this layering marble stamp set and stamp a little scrap piece of paper, but I wanted to show you that there's this new alignment guide. You can find it at waffleflower.com. It's very helpful to align this layering marble stamp set. I'm pointing out to you all the stamps. They're all there on the guide, and they also show you the straight edge where you should line it up to the edge of your paper, which I think is very, very helpful, in addition to the alignment areas. So right now I'm pointing out the alignment areas on the stamp set from the guide. That's for the second layer in this stamp, and that's for the third layer, and you can see how they fit inside of each other. I used a Sharpie, a green one in fact, not a blue, and I marked on my acetate that my stamps come with those alignment areas, so I don't have to refer to the alignment sheet every time. I have it marked on my acetate, so I can just use my stamp set to help me align those. So that's a really helpful thing. Okay, so I've got all the first layer stamps mounted on my MISTI, and you're supposed to start with your lightest shade. I'm going to do 2 of them in my lightest shade, which is this Waffle Flower Leica Pro dye ink. I'm going to ink those up here and then stamp them. I'm not doing that one on the right. I will do that in a medium shade. I just like the variation, so I'm breaking the rules here, but I just like that little bit of variation that it gives to my marble. So I'm inking up and stamping these twice, that way I just get a bold and crisp image. And I'm now going to use my medium shade, which is this Brilliance Starlight Black. It's a pigment ink. It's got a nice little like glitter shimmer to it. I really like that it's a little different than the other gray, a little bit on the warmer side. And now I've got my second layer mounted in my MISTI, and I will do these 2 layers, the same ones that go with the ones that I did with Leica Pro, in that Starlight. So in my medium shade I'll do those, and in my medium shade, or what should be my medium shade, my second layer, I'll use Leica Pro for that other section of layering marble. And now I'm going to move on to my stamp this one more time, and then I'll move on to the last layer, the third layer for this layering marble stamp set. And then for this third layer, which is supposed to be your darkest layer, I'm just doing in black. I'll do it in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. So I'm just going to ink up all 3 this time and stamp them all in this black. Not spending a lot of time on how I align this or position these stamps, just because I have already made a layering marble stamp video, which you can find at the Waffle Flower YouTube channel. So if you want to see that video, I go into more depth with how you layer and line up. Okay, so here I went ahead and cut 4 pots with those pots dies out of that layering marble scrap that I just created, and I also cut some of that green cardstock with the Greenery dies, which I have pointed out there. There's 6 Greenery dies. I'm just using 4 of them today, and I just actually used only 3 of the pots from the pot die set. I'm going to start with this first pot and these first set of leaves. So I've got a darker shade of green and a lighter shade of green, but they're all the same leaf die. And I'm going to take the 2 greens that I used for the leaves, and I'm going to trim this leftover cardstock down to make thin little strips. I'm not being too careful that they're all the same thickness or that they're all perfectly straight. This is going to be the stems of my I should tell you what I'm making. I'm going to make a potted plant, and this is going to be the stems of my potted plant. And now I'm going to take this lighter green and do the exact same thing, cut a couple stems. I think I believe I cut 2, and I cut 4 of the dark green. I'm going to arrange these a little bit, and that's when I realized that I need to trim these down. So I'm going to trim these down with my scissors. Just gather them all up and then trim them down a little bit shorter because they're just a little too long. And now I'm going to start to arrange them. So I'm going to do all my positioning and my arranging right here on my work surface, and then I will pick it up and move it to my card. So I'll show you how I do that in just a second. So I'm going to position all these little stems exactly how I want them to look. I'm really paying attention that they're not wider than my pot, so it appears that they're coming out of the pot. And once I get them just so, I'm going to use my washi tape I'll just put a strip of washi tape over them to hold them down. And then I'll put my pot where I want it, and then put a piece of washi tape over the pot to hold that down in place. So this washi tape is going to hold everything in place, and make sure it's everything's in the position that I want it to be. So this is a really helpful tip for when you're arranging anything, really anything, especially like obviously flowers and leaves. You can use your washi tape to kind of help you get everything in the right place, and then hold it in the spot with the washi tape. So what I just did there is I did fold a couple of those dark green leaves. Now I'm folding this lighter leaf just to add a little bit more depth to the leaves and make it look a little bit more realistic. And I'm going to fuss with these for a little bit. I'm trying to get them all in place here. It's a little bit warm today, so my fingers are a little damp and they're sticking to my fingers a little bit more than I'd like, so I'm having to get them just where I want them, and then of course they stick to my finger and everything shifts. But okay, so I just got it there. Make sure they're all kind of tightly together, and now I'm going to grab my washi tape again, and I'm going to put it directly over those leaves. And I want to make sure I get some of that washi tape on every one of those leaves, so it's all those leaves are held in place. And then I'll do one straight down the middle. There we go. And now I can pick this up. I'll just peel the edges off of my work surface here, off my mat. And then see, it's all held in place. Isn't that great? And then I can just pick this up and carry it over to my card, and then adhere it to my card. But before, obviously, I adhere it to my card, I've got to put on the adhesive. I'm using a liquid adhesive today. This is a Mod Podge matte, so it dries matte. So if I get any going past the edges of my leaves or my stems or the pot, it won't be as noticeable as if it was a glossy adhesive. And I've got this Mod Podge in a Quiller's bottle. It's just a bottle that has a fine nozzle, so it allows for precision. And I'm making sure I get the adhesive on all the stems, so every point of the stems, all the pot, as much as I can of the pot, and then I'm dotting it on the leaves. I'm making sure not putting any on the outermost edges of the leaves, because I will peel those up later and make them have a little bit more depth as well. So as you can see, I just picked it all up, and then I moved it to my card, and I'm using the washi tape now to hold it on the card as it dries as well. So it's got kind of like a dual function. And just that little pop there, edge is popping up, so I'm going to use an acrylic block here to kind of hold that edge down there. Okay, so now I'm going to work on my second pot for this card. I'm going to have 2 potted plants on this card. I'm going to cut some more stems now from the same green cardstock that I used to make the leaves. I'm going to cut some stems with that medium shade and then that light olive shade as well. And then I will trim these down because they are too long, especially those medium shade. Trim them down, and now I'll start to arrange them, just like I did on that last potted plant. And once I get them all arranged here, I'll do the same thing with the washi tape. I'll put that washi tape over them and kind of hold everything in place while I start to position everything else. So they're holding it down in place, making sure it's all going to fit in my pot. It looks like that's extending a little bit past my pot there, so I'm going to adjust it. And then that works for me. So now I'm going to use the washi tape to hold the pot in place. And now it's time to start arranging my leaves. So I'm just going to arrange them around. I'm going to make sure I cover up all the stems. I don't want any of those exposed. And I will actually trim, so you saw me fold, and now I'm going to actually trim down this die cut to make it a little smaller and just add a little bit more variation. And then, so I like that arrangement, so now I'm going to use my washi tape now, making sure I get washi tape on all those leaves so it holds everything down in place. And then I'll do one straight down the center. There we go. So now I'll peel it off the edges and I'll add my adhesive just like I did before. So again, when I add this liquid adhesive, I'm going to add it to the entire length of the stem because that's going to be directly down on my paper and I don't want to peel that up or anything. I want that to be nice and stuck. So I'm going to do the entire length of the stem. I'm going to glue as much as I can of the pot. I've got a little of the pot unexposed because of these stems. And then I'm putting a little dots of adhesive on the leaves, focusing it mostly in the center, the dead center of the plant, and not putting any on the outer edges of the leaves because I want to peel those up a little bit. I want to be able to kind of manipulate those later. I don't want them completely sealed. Now you'll see here I have to kind of remove this washi tape because I want this second potted plant to be behind the first. So I have to kind of peel off my washi tape before it's dry to make sure I can fit that in there. And a couple of my leaves did not get enough adhesive on them, so they didn't stick completely, and that's okay, it's no problem. I'm just going to pick those leaves up that didn't stick, and I'll just add some more adhesive. So this is not a full, it doesn't hold them, doesn't always get every one of your elements completely stuck, but it does for the most part get most of your foliage or flowers, whatever you are arranging. It'll hold most of it in place, and I think it does a pretty good job for helping to make sure you got everything in the position that you want it to be in. I used to take photos of things after I arranged it, and I always still found it to be difficult and not to get it exactly the way I wanted it to, so I like this washi tape technique more so than taking a photo and trying to recreate that photo later on your card. Okay, so this one I'm moving on to another card now and a different potted plant. I'm going to make a hanging potted plant. So just like I cut the stems, I cut some long thin strips from some khaki paper, and I just position them to be like kind of like almost like a teepee, and then I put the pot inside, and then I just use the washi tape to hold it in place. And again, I just snip that leaf there just to make it more so I can get fitted in better into my pot and make it look more realistic with the layers. And I'll use that other part that I snipped off for the other side of the pot, and I'm going to snip this leaf as well, and to make it look like it's hanging over the edge, like it's a hanging potted plant. I think this potted plant is my favorite by far. Just love the way it looks. I think I just really like hanging potted plants. Okay, so I'm just tweaking here, making sure the leaves appear like they're going over the edge of the pot instead of being tucked behind. That doesn't quite make as much sense. Your leaf should be growing over the edges of your pot. So I'm just tweaking and making sure it's all in the right spot. And then I will grab my washi tape here and put it down to hold everything in place. Oh, I'm going to tuck one more leaf in there just to make it a little fuller. And I think that's it. I'm going to leave it there. So I'm grabbing my washi tape just like I did before and putting it over all those leaves, making sure all those leaves have a piece of some washi tape in contact with them. And then I'll peel it off my craft table or my workspace, and then I will do the adhesive just like I did before. Making sure, though this time I'll just make sure I get all those strings instead of the stems. So doing the pot and the strings. So I'm going to go ahead and cut through it because I've just did exactly the same as I did before. And now I'll stick it onto my paper. and that washi tape will hold it down in place while it dries. So it really handy. It does like two jobs in one. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my final potted plant, and I'm just trimming off the stems here of those leaves. So I trimmed off all the stems, and this just makes it look more realistic, like it's actually coming from the hand cut stems that I created. And I'm folding those leaves again. So you've seen me fold before. This one is just a little bit better. I think you can see the folds a little bit better with these leaves. And that just kind of makes them look a little bit more realistic and more interesting as well. So I folded those leaves there, got the kind of arranging here the way I want it, and that's where I realized, okay, my stems are still too long, so I'm going to trim those real quick with my scissors, and then I will reposition my leaves and then use the washi tape as well. So for all my plants, I did do 2 different colors of cardstock, green cardstock. I just liked the variation. I liked the 2 different shades. I thought it looked a little more realistic that way. Okay, so once I get it here all arranged the way I want, and I'm making sure not everything is all perfect. I don't want like every leaf to be, I don't want it to be symmetrical. So I'm altering it just a little bit, just to make it a little not perfectly symmetrical, because that would not look as natural. And then using my washi tape just like I did before, once I get it all arranged just the way I like. And that one down the middle, that piece of strip of washi tape right down the middle, was really great, holds everything in place. And then I will use my liquid adhesive just exactly as I did before. I just wanted to show you guys, even though these are similar, very similar steps at each time, but I just wanted to show you how I arranged each one of those potted plants in case you liked one more than the other. You got to see kind of how I arranged it. Okay, and I'll place that down and use that washi tape and my acrylic block to kind of hold everything in place while it dries. Okay, so everything's dried now. I'm just going to show you really quickly what I did for the sentiment. So I just went ahead and put my card into my MISTI, aligned my sentiment, and I'm just stamping it in the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And that's done. So that's the first card that I made. I'll pull it up here so you can see it better. So that's the one we made with 2 of the potted plants. And so you can see how I can lift those edges up because I didn't adhere them. And I can kind of roll them up and curl them up to kind of add a little bit more depth and interest to those potted plants. Here's the second card, the hanging one. I just love this one. It's so pretty. I did trim the top off of those. I had those, if you remember, some of the strings, or the paper, I should say, extended past the card. I just used a pair of scissors to trim those off. And I used a sentiment that's from the potted stamp set. This sentiment is from the balloon stamp set. The balloon messages, stamp set, and that's the last plant that you saw me make, and I just lifted up those edges there. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want any more product info, please visit waffleflower.com, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.